To the Prime Minister. And we start with Andrew Jones.
Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The whole House is talking about the result of a heavily contested election. And indeed it is a year ago to the day, Mr. Speaker, that you were elected Speaker. And may I, on behalf of all members, wish you therefore a very happy anniversary, and thanks to you, Mr. Speaker, for making the speakership great again. Mr. Speaker, this morning thank you, Mr. Speaker, I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others in addition to my duties in this House. I shall have further such meetings later today.
Andrew Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The citywide testing trial starting in Liverpool on Friday using the new lateral flow tests will cut the time to get results, cut the spread of the virus by identifying people who are infected but not showing symptoms, and vastly reduce both the number of people and time involved in isolating. So the benefits to the NHS, to schools and to business are profound. When does the Prime Minister think the results from this trial will be available and the benefits of this extended across the UK?
I thank my honourable friend. He's absolutely right, and I can tell him that the pilot is planned to last for approximately 2 weeks, and we will keep the House updated on the results as they are evaluated.
We now come to the Leader of the Opposition, Keir Starmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I start with the elections in the United States? Whatever the results, will the Prime Minister join me in saying that it's not for a candidate to decide which votes do and don't count, or when to stop counting? The next president must be the free and fair choice of the American people. Can I also express my revulsion at the terrorist attacks in Nice and Vienna? I'm sure I speak for the whole House in saying our thoughts are with all of those affected. And of course, Mr. Speaker, can I join the congratulations on your one-year anniversary? Turning now, if I may, to COVID-19. On the 21st of September, when the government's scientific advisers indicated that a circuit break... Now, if I may, to COVID-19. On the 21st of September, when the government's scientific advisers indicated that a circuit break would bring the virus back with that advice, on Monday, 42 days later, the number of people who tragically lost their lives to COVID-19 was 397. That's a staggering 35-fold increase. Does the Prime Minister understand the human cost of his delay in acting?
Well, Mr. Speaker, in answer to his opening question, of course, we don't comment as a UK government on the democratic processes of our friends and allies, and I don't think, in all seriousness, he would expect otherwise. But, Mr. Speaker, turning to the point about COVID and the difficult decision that this House has to face tonight, I think I speak for many honourable members across this House when I say I don't think any government would want to impose these measures lightly, or any parliament would want to impose these measures lightly on the people of this country. And it was always right, Mr. Speaker, to pursue a local and a regional approach, as our scientific advisers said. And I'll tell you why, Mr. Speaker, because that regional approach, actually was showing signs of working, and still is showing signs of working. It did get the R down, the transmission rate down lower than it would otherwise have been, Mr. Speaker, but we have to face the reality that, in common with many other countries in this part of the world, we are now facing a surge in that virus, which this House must now tackle with the measures we've outlined. They will expire, as honourable members know, on December the 2nd. I hope very much the members opposite will support them tonight.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sure nobody wants a lockdown, but it is a question of time.
I hope very much the members opposite will support them tonight.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sure nobody wants a lockdown, but it is a question of timing. Had the half term. Now the Prime Minister's proposed lockdown will be for at least 4 weeks. That means businesses will be closed for longer and in the critical run-up to Christmas. Does the Prime Minister understand the economic cost of his delay in acting?
Mr. Speaker, and it's precisely because we understand the economic cost. And it's precisely because we understand the social, the psychological damage of lockdowns that it was right, Mr. Speaker, to go for the local and the regional solution that was supported and indeed supported by many members, indeed I think by the right honourable gentleman, as long as it was useful to him for a while. That was the right approach. But what I can tell him, Mr. Speaker, is that at the expiry of this period on December the 2nd, by then, as I said in answer to my honourable friend earlier on, we will be rolling out across this country new types of testing on a scale never seen before, beginning this week, as I've said, in Liverpool, enabling us to detect asymptomatic cases, Mr. Speaker. And that's crucial, because 70% of the transmission is taking place, as the House knows, between people who have no symptoms. And that will enable us to find new ways on a mass scale to break the chains of transmission. I want to thank particularly the Labour leadership of Liverpool for their cooperation, a manner of cooperation that I commend to the benches opposite.
Keir Starmer.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's delay in acting is a huge failure of leadership, and it's no good saying that there was support for the tier system. As he well knows, I looked at the evidence and made a decision 3 weeks ago that the right thing was for a circuit break. And I don't buy the argument, I don't think anybody does, that the facts suddenly changed this weekend. The direction of travel and the number of infections, hospital admissions and tragically deaths have been clear for weeks. But we are where we are. Millions of people across the country are really concerned about the restrictions that will come into force at midnight tonight. And I accept that we've all got a duty to pull together and try to make this lockdown work. So I just want to ask some basic and direct questions on behalf of those millions of people. First, will the lockdown end on the 2nd of December, come what may, or will it first? Will the lockdown end on the 2nd of December, come what may, or will it depend on the circumstances at the time? People need to know that.
Answer him very simply. As the House knows, and as I informed him repeatedly on Monday, these measures, these autumn measures to combat the surge, will expire automatically, Mr. Speaker, on December the 2nd, and we will then, I hope very much, be able to get this country going again, to get businesses, to get shops open again in the run-up to Christmas. But that depends on us all doing our bit now to make sure that we get the R done. I've no doubt that we can, and that we'll be able to go forward from December the 2nd with a very, very different approach. But, of course, it will be up to the House of Commons to decide thereafter what to do.
Mr. Speaker, I accept there will be a vote in the House. That doesn't tell us anything. That's the process. But I want to press the Prime Minister. Is he saying that if by the 2nd of December the R rate, the infection rate, has not come below 1, and therefore on the 2nd of December the infection rate is still rising on the 2nd of December, is he saying that come what may, we will come out of lockdown with infection rates going up on the 2nd of December? That doesn't seem sensible to me.
Mr. Speaker, it is thanks to the efforts of the British people that the R is now currently only just above 1 as it is. And we are doing the right and the prudent thing at the right time to get that infection rate down. And these measures, as I've said repeatedly to the House, Mr. Speaker, will expire on the 2nd of December. If he's now saying he wants to protract them beyond the 2nd of December, then perhaps he should make his position clear.
Keir Starmer.
I just want some basic honesty, and this is serious. If the infection rate, we've got to look the public in the eye. If the infection rate is still going up on the 2nd of December, it is madness to come out of the system back to the tiered system when we know the one thing the tiered system can't cope with is an R rate above 1. That's the basic point. We can come back to it on the 2nd of December, as we always do, Mr. Speaker, but that's the point I'm making. The one thing we know a circuit breaker or lockdown does do is to buy time. And the Prime Minister needs to use that time to fix, test and trace. And I know he'll talk about the capacity of 500,000, what's going on in Liverpool is world-beating, etc. But we've been going round and round in circles on this. Mr. Speaker, the latest figures show that 113,000 contacts were not even reached, and that's just in 1 week. Only 20% of those who should be isolating are doing so, and the majority of people still don't get results in 24 hours. So can the Prime Minister give a straight answer? What's he going to do in the next 4 weeks to fix this? Because if he doesn't, we'll be back here again.
Mr. Speaker, with greatest respect to the right honourable gentleman who has stood up and said that I will brag about NHS test and trace and their achievement of 500,000, a target of capacity of 500,000. I think I'm perfectly willing to accept the failings of NHS test and trace, Mr. Speaker. Of course I am. And of course I take full responsibility for the frustrations people have experienced with that system. But to go from 3,000 tests a day, 2,000 tests a day, to 500,000 is a quite remarkable feat. It's the biggest diagnostics exercise this country has ever carried out. And, Mr. Speaker, they are helping to drive down the R. They are doing, in my view, an absolutely invaluable job, whatever the difficulties they face. What we now need to do is to come together as a nation, briefly if we can, to put aside party political wrangling and point scoring, and work together, as I think he will tonight, work together to support this package, to get the R down and allow us to go forward in a different way with the mass testing that I've outlined from December the 2nd.
Keir Starmer.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister must see that if 4 out of 10 of those that should be contacted are not being contacted, we've got a problem in the system that needs to be fixed in the next 4 weeks. Finally, I want to ask about care homes, which of course were hit so badly in the first wave of this pandemic. And can I pay tribute, Mr. Speaker, to all those working in care homes who've given such dedication and commitment in the toughest of circumstances, and we owe it to them not to repeat the mistakes of the first wave. But, Prime Minister, as we face the second wave, there's an increasing concern about the emotional well-being of those in care homes and their families if all visits are stopped. It must be possible to find a way, perhaps a dedicated family member scheme of some sort, to allow some safe visits to alleviate the huge fears of isolation and despair across the coming months. Will the Prime Minister work cross-party to find a scheme that will work for those in care and their families?
Well, Mr. Speaker, the new guidance on care homes and visiting. Well, Mr. Speaker, the new guidance on care homes and visiting relatives safely, because the point he makes is incredibly important. A real need to see their loved ones, and obviously the risk of spreading the disease in care homes. We're going to be publishing some guidance about how that can be done today. And I'm grateful to his offer to work collaboratively. But I have to say, Mr. Speaker, that the House will generally have noted that he has used this crisis as an opportunity to make political capital, to have what I think a shadow spokesman called a good crisis. A good crisis, Mr. Speaker. Well, can I commend a different approach? Because he's attacked the government's strategy. Can I commend a different approach? Because the former Labour leader, the Right Honourable former member for Sedgefield, who is not as fashionable on those benches as he once was or should be, has written a good, not with all of them, Mr. Speaker, that's on the front bench, but not with all of them. He's written a good piece in today's Daily Mail, Mr. Speaker, in which he broadly supports this government's strategy, praising UK drugs companies for what they're doing, supporting our search for a vaccine, and supporting mass testing in Liverpool, which he deprecates, Mr. Speaker. And I think what he should do is actually take a leaf out of the Blair book, Mr. Speaker. And by the way, I can tell him that Tony Blair would not have spent 4 years in the same shadow cabinet as Jeremy Corbyn, standing shoulder to shoulder with him.
Nick Fletcher.
Mr. Speaker, I understand the position the government is in today, and although this is desperately hard for